Take a breath. Welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, weekly inspiration for self-love and soft living. I am your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm a 3-time Anthem Award winner, Reiki master, and community builder. And I'm the author of the book Space to Exhale. Through healing modalities like breathwork, affirmations, and meditations, I'll guide you on a life-changing journey to help you know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and create much-needed space to exhale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, a safe, serene sanctuary where we focus on high vibrations, affirmations, soft living, and self-care. I'm your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm a 3-time Anthem Award-winning activist, a Reiki master, and the author of Space to Exhale, a handbook for curating a soft, centered, serene life. I'm here to help us all do just that. Relax, take a breath, say no to hustle culture, and yes to a life of ease. My hope and dream is for us all to curate lives that we don't feel we need a break from. Today, I am super excited to introduce to you my guest, Elona Washington. Elona is the Chief Publishing Officer of the award-winning indie publishing imprint, The Author's Journey, and the editor of the best-selling and award-winning anthology, Triumph in the Trenches, the Green Book for Black Professionals. Elona, welcome. Yay! I'm
Thank
so happy you're
you.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. This is awesome. I know this is going to be a good show and a deep show, and I'm ready to dive into it. But you have been on the show before, and you are also a listener and viewer, and so you know how we always get started. We are going to take a moment to exhale, and we are going to take a few deep breaths. And so, everyone, close your eyes, relax, think about slowing down your breath a bit, lower your shoulders, relax your eyelids, your forehead, your jaws, and inhale through your nose and exhale. And inhale and exhale. And one more time. Inhale and exhale. Okay. So now we're centered, we're grounded. And Elona, before we even get fully into the show, something that is on our hearts and on the hearts of many of us in the culture is the passing of Malcolm Jamal Warner. We grew up with him as Theo. Many of us call him Theo affectionately, still to this day. And we're in a moment of collective grief. So I wanted to open space and hold space for you and anybody else to just share what you're feeling and what's on your heart.
Thank you for this. And I think it's important that we stop and recognize how we're feeling. I know when I saw the news, you know how sometimes we think that we're just going to work through it, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes we can't. And I know for me, because this is, writing to exhale,
Yeah.
when I had posted about it on social media, I literally had no words. Like all I could really post was like his image. So sometimes it just takes a moment for us to sit in our feelings and process them. But what I've learned the hard way is trying to push them down and keep on doing what you were doing before you heard the news or any news really is detrimental to your health physically and emotionally as well.
Yeah, same. I definitely agree with that. And for me, it brought up so many feelings because it's a grief for him, for his family, his loved ones. It happened so tragically because he, it was an accidental death. He was on vacation with his daughter and his family, and unfortunately, he drowned tragically. And so I can't even imagine what his family is going through right now. His loved ones. He was beloved in the acting community, the creative community. But like I said, we all felt like we grew up with him. We know that shirt. If I say Theo's shirt, we all know which shirt we're talking about, right? And so we're mourning him. It's a collective grief. And one thing you found out and I found out as well is that he was a poet. In addition to being an actor, he was also a writer and a poet. And he wrote Exhale. You and I write Exhale. And so it's feeling and understanding that bond as, one creative to another, even though we never knew him personally. We felt like family, and it felt real, you know, it was real.
Yep, absolutely. I've been watching his spoken word
Hmm.
on video. I was watching him last night and I was like, he's actually really good. I didn't even know he had that side to him. And then I also discovered in 1988, he and another guy wrote a book and they took all of the questions and problems from their fans because they were writing Theo and he
Oh,
answered those questions and put it in a book. And I
that's
thought that was so special, right? He did it at
yeah.
18. Yeah.
I did not know that. I didn't know that. I mean, I found out so much because this is actually part of the grieving process, right? It is, sort of almost like researching the person, getting to know them even better than you thought you did, and it's
Mhm.
all part of like trying to understand why. And as writers, we understand the research is part of the writing as well. And I remember actually yesterday seeing your post about Malcolm Jamal, and it touched me. And so we're all researching, and yes, there may or may not be a bit of doom scrolling there, but that's part of processing the grief, and part of how you and I personally process the grief as well, and process our feelings in general, is writing. And so um you've described, you and I, those of you who are, listening and watching with us right now, Ilona and I are both colleagues and friends. And so we are both professional writers, and we have a lot of talks about writing, both from one friend to another and one professional to another. And so, Ilona, you've discussed and described writing as a form of release and resistance. And so, one of my questions is, what was the moment in your life when you realized that storytelling could be a means of healing for you?
Absolutely. I think I realized storytelling was going to be an act of resistance first.
Hmm.
And I was going into the eighth grade. How are you, like 12, 13 years old when you're
Um,
going into the eighth grade?
I didn't grow up here, so I never know the grades, but I will take your word for it.
I don't know the number. Somebody in the comments could tell me what the number
Tell us,
is. So,
right?
at that age, my family was relocating from Princeton, New Jersey to Silver Spring, Maryland. And
Mm,
I remember sitting in the front seat, the windows rolled down. We had little hand cranker rolling down the window.
yeah.
And I just remember my hand out the window and I'm looking out and I just kept saying, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to tell everybody what they did to me because
Ooh.
I'm a Me Too survivor, right? And I always knew from that age that writing was a form of resistance. I grew up as a child reading the classics, for my bedtime, my mother used to read Shakespeare. It was really weird. And so
I love that.
I would fall
So
asleep.
you were going to sleep to Friends, Romans, Countrymen. Lend
I
me your ear.
The
That,
Tempest and
that's
A
awesome.
Midsummer Night's Dream. Yeah, that's what
Okay.
I remember the most. So I knew like it was a form of expression and it was beautiful and all of that, but I wanted to write as a form of resistance. So fast forward to 2016, I'd always been journaling, and I think a lot of people journal too. You journal your feelings and you get it out, but
Hmm.
to me, it always felt like I was journaling because I was mad or sad and I was getting it out. But the whole writing experience as a form of healing, I really didn't understand until I wrote my memoir back in 2016, and just going through the process and remembering everything that had been done and putting it down on paper in order. And then it's like a light bulb went off. Like I can understand now why I made that decision, or I can understand how I allowed this thing in my life. And once you lay it out like that, it is definitely a form of healing for anybody.
Mm. Oh wow. Thank you very much for sharing that. And do you care to share any more about what you wrote about in your memoir? If you don't, that is okay. That is absolutely okay. That is up to you. So it is a safe space. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. If you want
You
to share,
know,
that's fine. And if you don't, that's also fine.
so look, most of LinkedIn, well, most of my followers pretty much know. Um, so I was raised by two Ivy League graduates, Princeton and Dartmouth. So I was a very uppity child. I went to Howard, pledged a sorority, and then once I finished, I became what they call on TikTok a midnight ballerina. Um,
Oh my gosh, I have never heard that term,
I
but
think it's just a
as
class.
soon as you said it, I'm like, I know exactly what that is. Okay. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. So I just called myself a midnight ballerina.
Okay.
So I did it for 5 years, and no one understood why. Like, if you thought about my upbringing, my parents, like we never lived in the inner city. We were always upper middle class.
Hmm.
And then I went to Howard. That's bougie on top of bougie. I never had that experience, but and I say it in my book, and I say it when I'm talking. When I walked through those doors the first night, I felt more at home there than I did anywhere else. At my mother's house, college campus, friend's house, church, everywhere. And for a long time, I felt like I belonged there because of what was done to me. I belonged there. So that's what I wrote about, and how I went over, how I got over that feeling and transformed my life.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And also, I can see from the comments you have definitely midnight ballerina. I feel like we're going to be seeing that on LinkedIn from now
I
on.
know. People gonna be like, what are y'all talking
What
about?
are y'all talking about? Listen, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, Google it. That's all. That's all I can tell you. And so after you wrote your memoir and progressed in your career, and what a lot of people don't know, I didn't even know it, of course, when we first became friends, is that you have deep experience in publishing. Like, I introduced you as an indie publisher. That is only barely scraping the surface, because yes, you're an indie publisher, but you also have years, possibly decades. I don't want to age you, but let's say years. You and I are similar in age, right? Years of experience in traditional publishing. And so you know publishing as a writer, someone who's been self-published, someone who's published others, and so on. What led you to get deeper into, like, go beyond journaling, go beyond your memoir, and get into the publishing industry as a whole?
I grew up reading books. I would read a book a day, literally. My mother would, when I was a child, talking about elementary school years, my mother would actually call the house from work and then she would say, "Put the book down and go outside." So
Oh,
I always,
you were that kid?
I was that kid.
Okay,
Always
bonus
had
points. Did you wear glasses or no?
of course, of
Oh my God.
course.
We were the same kid. I love it.
So I've always wanted to work in publishing. You know how someone says, like, you have a dream job, what's your dream job? It would have been to read books for a living and get paid to do so.
So you did that.
I Yes, so I did that. Now I started off self-publishing first because I self-published my book, and it was a conscious decision to do so. Um, my my corporate background is marketing, and I understood the climate. I knew I probably would not have gotten a deal. I probably could have gotten a deal if I actually worked at it, because I had been speaking for Rain for about 5-6 years before I started to write my process. But I knew I didn't want to do it because I wanted to tell my story my way. There was no way I could talk about what transpired in my life and how I got out in a traditional format, because they would have just cut so much of my story. So it was a conscious decision to self-publish my book. And me being a marketer, once it was released, and I tell you and I tell everybody, that's when the real work begins. But that's the part I actually love the most. I love book marketing. And I feel like you spent all this time and energy and, cried over pages to write this book. Um, you're not done, sis. You still need to get up, find the energy, and market the book. Because what's the point of sharing your lesson and story if you can't, you don't find the people to read it?
Yeah.
So
Otherwise, you could have just written it in your journal, to be honest.
Exactly, exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of success from my memoir. Journalist Me Too kicked off like 7 months later, but even before that, I had speaking engagements up and down 95. I was living on the East Coast at the time, and I did a lot of vending, a lot of speaking, and I just talked a lot on social media about my book. Then Me Too kicked off, and then it was a whole nother game. Like USA Today, Washington Informer, Canadian Broadcasting Company, like everybody wanted to hear my story, because if you think about midnight ballerinas, you think that they're living in poverty or some type of stress, and then they're doing it to get out to make a better life for themselves. And so people were intrigued that I had the background that I had, and I became a midnight ballerina.
Yeah.
And
But
it was
yours was an expression of
100%
your
because of the
trauma.
abuse. If I had not been abused, I would have
Yeah,
been the bougie
mm, I think you're breaking up a
I'm
little
sorry, I
bit.
missed that.
I think you're breaking up a
I'm
little bit.
back.
Okay, you're back. So you were saying if you um, had not been abused, did I hear you correctly? If you had not been abused, you would not have been a midnight ballerina. Is that what you said?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And a lot of people take detours in their life because something has happened, or because something was said to them, or because they get this feeling that they don't deserve better, which is why I help people to write their stories. I mean, like you said before, you can write it in your journal and heal, right? But once you decide to go public and publish a book, you're doing it to help others heal.
Right, right. Well, that leads us nicely into look. You're a great you're great at a segue. So tell us about Triumph in the Trenches. So it brings together a group of very powerful Black professionals naming their truths about their lived experiences in corporate spaces. Tell us more about where you got the idea, the genesis of it. Tell us more. The floor is open to you.
Certainly. I got the idea when the news about Dr. Bailey
Mm-hmm.
erupted, and we were all, just so heartbroken. And it's so sad that death makes us, or prompts us to rethink our life or rethink our direction or do something that we know we should be doing anyway, right? But just reading her story and learning how she was treated at Lincoln, the steps she took to try to get reconciliation, and the lack of support she received, and her thinking like that was the only solution to her problem, just inspired me or motivated me to put the book together and say, sis, brother, we have other options. Like that life, that job is does not define you.
Mhm.
You can find something better or you can do your own thing. So it really is an urgent call to us to put ourselves first, to decenter corporate spaces, white spaces, heal, take some steps to exhale, and find our direction.
I love that. I love that. And yes, I remember I wrote a couple of lines about the Claudia Bailey in Space Exhale as well because it really it touched so many of us, like her story and her experience. And for those of you who aren't fully familiar, uh, essentially she I don't like to use the word unalive, but I think that's a good word to use it now. But she really died. She died by suicide, if I recall correctly,
Yes.
due to being bullied in academia, in academic spaces. And she had asked for help. She'd asked for support, and essentially was denied. And it got so unbearable that she took her own life. She was bullied into taking her own life. Let me put the onus where it belongs, right? So that's what Elona is referring to, and I can definitely see where, especially given your background, because some of these circumstances might be different, but some of the effects might be similar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had my own toxic boss, which prompted me to walk away from corporate America altogether. So I completely relate to that. And I battled with it as well. And I just saw so many posts of black men and women, because men were writing too,
Mm-hmm.
about the horrors of their workplace. And there has to be a solution. I keep thinking about the book Black Fortune by Shamari Wills.
Yes.
And it's the story of several black freedmen right after emancipation, right after the end of slavery, where they became millionaires. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept thinking, if they can do it, we can do it. Algorithm is not an excuse, right?
Woo!
So
Yes.
the algorithm,
I love that. It's true though. We all get into, I even talk about it sometimes. We both do about, the algo. The algo is a hater and so on and so forth. But you can't let that two things can be true. The algo can be a hater and you can proceed nevertheless. Right? So
yeah,
I love that.
the algorithm is definitely a hater. There are other ways they try to silence our voices. I know now, since we got the new person in office, that there were some publishing houses who excitedly made statements that they're going to they started these conservative imprints. They're
Hmm.
going to focus less on the other imprints. And I've spoken to more than three black women literary agents who are moving out of representation because they can't get people book deals, and they're doing other things. So they always move in several ways. Like, we want to fight them this way,
Hmm.
but they're also moving in five different ways that we don't see. That's why there's no one real solution to any of this. And that's why, if traditional publishing works and you can get out there, do it, because it helps with representation. But if you can hybrid or self-publish, do that too, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get your message out there to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as somebody, I SpaceX Halo is traditionally published. It's published by Wiley. And I've spoken with you, my sister who is self-published, and I have a lot of authors and writers in my circle. Unsurprisingly, my experience and my reading of the situation with publishing is that trad publishing to me is like self-publishing but with better distribution. That's my experience, and by that I mean you still, yes, you have the publishing house behind you, but there's still a lot that you need to do yourself as an author. So there's no you have to take ownership not only of your story, but of, as you mentioned earlier, getting your story out there, marketing your book once it is actually published, and that falls squarely on your shoulders. It really does not matter how you're published. So pick whatever works for you. But like you said, if you can't or don't want to, right, to trad publish, that's fine. Trad publishing is not for everyone, you know. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Um, Now, one of the reasons that I wrote my book, you mentioned it about your memoir as well, is that I had things I needed to say and get out in the world and get off my chest. And so I think many of our listeners are probably carrying stories that they've never told or shared with anyone. Um, Stories of harm, resilience, survival, all of the things. What guidance would you give to someone who has never written before, but would like to, that is feeling that call to put pen to page and to become an author? Like what advice do you have for them?
The first thing I would say, because I speak to several people every week, and when I hear where people are in their journey, even if they can afford it, sometimes you're not ready. You need to be psychologically safe, financially safe, spiritually safe, emotionally safe. So some people haven't really, I don't want to say healed enough, but they may still be dependent upon whatever system structures or abuser or loved one or family member. And there's a lot of unpacking that needs to be done
Yes.
before they're ready to tell the world about it. But journaling and writing it out, writers' workshops, retreats, all of that could be a great path to healing. One thing that I learned when I worked in house at the publishing company was I love Harvard Business Review. I always read their articles, and they had an article that said the higher up you get in corporate America, the more necessary it is to journal. And I still have my journal from my time there and the people that I had to manage and co-work with. And I go back and then I read it every once in a while. And I'm like, oh my God, this makes such a good book. But
There's still time. There's still time.
ooh, ooh. But sometimes you have to step away or be so far removed away from the situation before you can put it out there for the world, because you're going to get so much criticism and backlash, and then the self-doubt, and then did this really happen, and how am I going to talk about it, because you still have to market it. People
Yeah,
are going to read it, people are going to leave reviews, and are you going to be in a headspace where you can take all of that?
right. Because again, and this is something that we say all the time. The writing of the book, it is its own exercise, and depending on where you are in your writing journey, it may or may not be difficult for you. For people like Elona, myself, who, like, we are professional writers, for me personally, the writing was not the difficult part. I was like, and 130,000 words later, my publisher was like, yeah, you're gonna need to get rid of some of those words, honey. Right? But the marketing, and the marketing is not just, I don't know, placing ads and whatever. Like, you're not removed or distanced from the marketing. You are the brand because you wrote the book. So you had to be prepared. And I'm actually going to read an excerpt. Y'all will understand exactly what I mean. You have to be prepared that whatever you put out there in your book is out there permanently, especially if you are trad published and not self published. If you're self published, you have the option to be like, okay, I think I'm going to unpublish this and make it no longer available, right? Which people have done, right, Ilona?
I've done it.
Right? People have done. But if your book is trad published or hybrid published, as far as I know, your book is out there and you have to keep talking about it. And so, whatever you write about, you have to be prepared. And as Ilona said, not just be prepared, but be in the right headspace. Are you prepared if you write about trauma, which you might not be, but if you are you prepared to talk about it? Are you prepared to talk about the things, the family secrets, that weirdo uncle, right? Are you prepared to talk about the weirdo uncle for the next 20 years? Because you probably will have to,
Yeah,
so really think about those things.
yeah. And I think I posted one of my LinkedIn newsletters. I found a statistic. I could not believe it. And it said like 51 or 52, over half of writers suffer with mental illness as they're writing the book. And I want to say it's not just people who write memoirs, it's people who write any type of genre. The writing process itself, if you're a first time writer, Lisa, you're special. But for a lot of people, I think it challenges who they are or who they think they are, and it puts them on another level, and they're afraid of it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree. I think part of what helped me actually, frankly, is age and experience, right? Because if I had attempted to write this same book 10, 20, 30 years ago, I could not have written this book. I could have written a book and even a great book, but not this book,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also, again, getting back to being prepared to talk about the things and being mentally prepared, energetically prepared, spiritually ready, right? All of that is part of it. 25-year-old me and 55-year-old me are two different people, two completely different people, So that is, I think, part of what made the writing a lot easier for me, you know. But for most people, especially most people, start off frankly, a lot younger, right? And so if you're writing your first book at 25 and you don't have a background in writing, that's another important nuance there. If you want to write a book, you're, I don't know, your 20s, 30s, whatever, you've never written a book and writing has never been a part of your life, it is going to take everything from you, everything that you have, because you are learning, you are growing, you are creating, you are birthing an artifact, and that is not a light task. It's not easy.
I have an author. She actually won an award for her book. So
Oh,
she was the first author to win a book award for her
mhm.
book. And when she was writing it, well, we first met. July makes 2 years. I've um, been in business with the author's journey, and 3 years I've been in entrepreneurship. So yay! So she was my very first client, Maisha Thompson, my very first client, and she was like, "Oh, she already had it like outlined and some parts written. She's like, I'll be done in November." I was like, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah, very first book." It came out in May. And so look,
Not even December or January, but May.
yeah, it came out in
Right.
May. So this is her thing. She's like, "Oh, I can't wait to write this book. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so great. I gotta write this book. I gotta find time to write this book. Man, I'm not writing this book. I'm taking a break. It's too much." And then she's like, "Let me just finish this damn book." So it went from this great book to this
Right?
damn book. So
It was a full 180.
and that's why I call it the author's journey, because
Oh,
you're gonna go
wow.
on an emotional roller coaster.
Wow,
That's
wow,
your
wow.
first journey.
Okay. Well, oof. Yes. I do relate to all of those moods. I relate to all of those moods because there comes a time when you're like, I just want it done. I want
Yes.
it done, you know?
Yep.
And that's the time when all of a sudden you start noticing the details, the loose ends that need to be tied up. Oh, I mentioned this here, but did I finish that arc here? All of that stuff, you know. But
Yeah, and you want
it,
to be done.
you want
Yeah,
to be
you want to
done,
be done.
especially
Yep.
it takes months. I always say I'm a fan of what I call slow cooking a book. You know, I truly admire people that can knock a book out in 30 days. I don't know how they do it, right? I know there are people that do it and even do it well. I am not capable of doing that. I think that is its own talent. But I like to slow cook a book. I like to, write, put it down, let it marinate, come back to it, let the seasonings get into it, and then go back and see how is the flavor. You do a all right, more salt, right?
Yeah.
Needs a
So,
little bit more salt. Yeah.
yep, yep. So you see everywhere, write your book in 90 days, outline your book in 5 days or whatever. So when I started the self-publishing arm, because I'm a hybrid publisher. So when I
Mhm.
started the self-publishing arm, I was like, oh, I'll just do the whole 90-day thing. Every single person who came on board said, no, I don't want to do it slowly. I don't want to do it quickly. I want to take my time, make sure it's
Mhm.
right. I want to do my research. So I really like that about them. And they found me, and they didn't want to have like this really quick business book or
Yeah.
memoir done. They wanted to make sure that it was done right. And I like that.
Yeah. And something, I mean, like I mentioned at the top of the show, you and I have actually worked together in terms of like book marketing, just general book advice and so on and so forth. And one thing I appreciate about you is that you tailor your approach to each author. It's not a cookie cutter. Okay, here's what you get. This is my plan, and you just slap a different name on it and give it to each person, right? Like you. I remember you telling me, here's my vision for your book and the kinds of posts I want to see, not only from me, but from readers. And it's interesting because you said that months ago. And one of the first posts that I saw was somebody, photo of the book with a nice bottle of wine, I think it was, by a pool, chilling, right? And I was
Yep.
like, did Ilona manifest this? But
Yep.
you said no, that's the vibe of your book. It's about relaxation, enjoying life, soft living, and that's what you need to communicate. And and if you communicate that, then the posts are going to come,
Yep.
right? From like UGC, user generated content. That's what's going to happen. You've
Yes.
worked with Ernest Krim the third. What you advised him to do is not the same as what you advised me to do. So you tailor your approach to each author, and I really, really appreciate that very much.
Thank you. I know people hate marketing, and authors are mostly introverts. And I'm probably the only person who actually loves book marketing. So I take that into consideration, because for me, like when we started working together, I was like, girl, let's just go. Let's just go. And you were like, no, no. And so I had to pull back and say,
Yeah.
okay, because if you had gone at my speed and done it quickly, it would not have been you. Like, and the brand would have been off, because you are the queen of rest. And I did not want to rest. I wanted to go, go, go. But
That
you're
was
the
enthusiasm, though. It wasn't so. I think it was from the perspective that you were so and are so passionate about the book that you immediately, and you listen. I'm the queen of rest. You're the queen of ideas. You immediately had like 1,000 ideas. Okay, we can do this, blah blah. We had a plan, but again, because you realized who you're working with, and that I was already overwhelmed for
overwhelmed. Hmm.
multiple reasons that we will not get into here, but I was overwhelmed, and even if I wanted to, I literally did not have the time or capacity to. And that was something that we're talking, this is the real stuff that people are not going to tell you, but we're going to tell you, right?
Hmm.
All of the behind the scenes. And so for me, I was doing the book marketing, not initially, right, not entirely on my own, but I would say 98% on my own. Then came Elona, right? And listen, an immediate difference and a lessening of some of the weight, right? But that's why I said at the beginning, a lot of the marketing of a book lies firmly on the shoulders of the author. And I often felt actually I was letting you down and the book down and so on because I wanted to go at your pace. I wanted to. I just literally couldn't. I'm like, I don't have any more time. There's no more time, you
Yeah,
know?
but you know what? You're still a case study because I have two very different clients. I have Ernest Krim, I have you, and then I have other clients as well.
Yeah.
But Ernest went at my pace. I sent him a
Yes.
30-page book marketing thing. He did it really, he did it faster than I would have ever thought he did it. He
Yeah.
implemented
And he
that
had
sucker in a
excellent
minute.
results. He had
Right.
excellent results. Yeah.
And he actually, but you went at your pace, you stuck to your brand and
Hmm.
what you felt was important, and then the right people came to you, and then
Hmm.
your book was all over LinkedIn. So your definition of success differed from his definition of success, which was why your strategy differed from his, and you both found success. So when people come to me, they're like, oh, what's the one thing that I need to do, or what do I need to do to sell a lot of books? What do you suggest I do? I can't tell you that. You tell me what you're comfortable doing, and
Hmm.
then we're going to put that plan together. And then I say this lovingly, I'm going to be on your ass to make sure you
And she
complete.
will. And she will.
I don't, I'm
Remember,
not,
I remember once you and I were, I don't even know what we were talking about. We were on the phone, and then all of a sudden, mid conversation, you were like, wait, did you tell me you had editing to finish? Why are we talking right now? Okay, bye. That was the end of the conversation, yo. She's like, go and finish your editing. We'll talk when you're done with the
mhm,
next batch that you have. Finish that, then call me, you know?
yep,
But somebody like me, like I appreciate that. I appreciate clarity. I appreciate directness. I appreciate genuine help and support. And something else I appreciated was that you very quickly realized you're like, okay, Lisa is not only neurodivergent, but she's neurodivergent and overwhelmed right now. And so you were definitely like, okay, I can't give Lisa a full 50-page plan. She won't
mhm,
even know where to start. She'll be even more overwhelmed. And so we had co-working sessions. You're like, here is what we are working on today. We are doing this one thing. This is the goal of this because I always have questions. I'm like, okay, why are we doing it? What is the purpose? You would explain. I'm like, okay, once I understand, I'll do it. And but it was one thing at a time, and then a build. Each I think it was we would meet on Saturdays, and each Saturday we would add another brick to the
mhm,
wall that we were building, and I
yep,
I appreciated that
yep.
a
And
lot.
you did exactly what you wanted to do. You became an Amazon category bestseller like you wanted. Not a coincidence. It happened on Juneteenth, so I thought that was extra special.
Right.
You had the book launches of all book launches. It was so pretty, and
Oh,
it was such a vibe, and it was everything you and your book are. Like walking in there, you just immediately felt peace. That room that we went into, that first room, what was it?
love you
What
love yourself
Love
room.
yourself. Yes. And how we had the meditation, and we went around the table, and it was so pretty. I said, okay, I see why she's doing it like this. I see why she's doing it like this. Because if I gave you Ernest plan, you executed Ernest plan, and people read your book, they would have been like, this doesn't
It's a
feel
disconnect.
like, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Disconnect. But
It was
that's the beauty of working with people who have common sense and intuition, and who listen and who have wisdom, right? Because there are people who would have just been like, okay, here's your plan, and that's it. And so I really applaud you. And again, you and I are friends, so we talk, and so every now and then you'll share, oh, here's what I'm thinking of doing for XYZ project. There's one friend talking to another, but it makes sense for that project every time. So kudos to you. So
Thank you.
listen, I have a question for you. So in the midst of, we talked about writing all of the sort of self exposure, the vulnerability, the self revelations, opening yourself to greater self knowledge and also to criticism and so on, right? And sharing your stories authentically, with bravery and courage. But how do you center self care, or how do you care for yourself in the midst of doing like a major writing project?
So let me say, before I met you, I got an early copy of Space to Exhale. So I got it in like January, February. That book changed how I work.
Oh,
Before that, I did it the way the colonizers taught us to. You work until you're tired. Who cares that you're sick? Who cares that you're hurt? You need to get this thing done by this date, right? It could be a self-imposed date or a date that someone else has given to you. And I remember one of my authors, she had asked me, like, why don't you call or why don't you talk? And I'm like, girl, I'm working. Like I don't talk to anybody. And then she called me again in May and she was like, you still working hard? I was like, no, I'm sitting down on the couch resting. And you would have never,
that would
ever,
have never happened before, right?
ever heard me say that. No, no, not during working hours. That wasn't gonna help. That wasn't gonna happen at all.
Mhm.
Now I listen to my body and I listen to my spirit. And
Mhm.
I know, even in my 25 years of corporate, when I was writing my memoir, when I was writing all of these anthologies and coordinating all of these anthologies, every time I worked past capacity and I looked the next day, 8 times out of 10, it was trash and I had to do it over. So, why are we working ourselves um, into an early grave or working ourselves until we're too tired when we know the output isn't going to be half as good as if we got the rest that we needed? So now I will stop and I'll take a break. I'll go outside. I'll walk my cat. Yes, I have a leash for the cats. And we go on walks. Um,
I just have this image in my mind of the two of y'all like,
and don't play with me because I will post it. I will have a
please
video
do.
of us
Please do.
walking.
I need to see that. I need to see it. I need to see
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
And
one of the things that I do every episode, as you know, is like I read an excerpt from the book, and I ask my guest slash co-host. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to read? And so we've been talking a lot about writing as healing, about telling your story authentically, about opening yourself up. We talked about, okay, what are you prepared to share publicly and keep talking about? And that's something that I had to ask myself. Ilona's had to ask herself this many times, right? From her memoir, on forward. And so the excerpt that Ilona chose is actually from chapter 1, which is called Know Yourself. And it's about leaning into your strength. And yeah, it's about how you deal with what life throws at you. And I'm sharing this because again, Ilona chose it, and I think it fits in here because just listen and you'll understand why we say like be prepared. Like you're gonna share some stuff. Are you prepared for people to ask you questions about the stuff that you have shared? So this is an excellent example. So here we go. Lean into your strength. Life has tried to keep me down or even take me out more than once. I'm sure it's the same for most of us. It's not a question of whether the storms are coming, it's a matter of when. I've dealt with molestation, not by family, sexual assault, domestic violence, health issues, car accidents, chronic pain, extreme burnout, suicidality, mental illness, misogynoir, and multiple forms of abuse: physical, emotional, financial, racial, systemic. But this, alas, is the nature of life. It's not that struggle will never happen. It's a matter of how you respond. I'm not saying that I never falter. I definitely do. Big time. Sometimes it truly feels like life is trying to bust me down to the white meat. But I eventually regain my footing, raise my head high, and keep moving forward. To recover my strength, even in my weakest moments, I remember the stock of which I am made. I remember whose child I am. I remember those on whose shoulders I stand. I remember that I am part of a community, and my community loves me. I remember that if I have overcome before, I can do so again. I am more than my traumas. I am more than my trials. I am more than my tragedies. We all are. As Pastor Donnie McClurkin says, we fall down, but we get up. Remembering who you are makes it easier to get back up. And scene. So it was interesting to me as soon as I asked you, oh, you know what do you want me to read? And you, without hesitation, you're like, I know exactly what I want you to read. So tell me why, and our listeners, why you selected this segment.
I don't know anyone who hasn't gone through anything. We all go through something. It may not be as horrendous as your friend or your neighbor or your cousin, but we're all navigating the trials and tribulations of life.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned is that even when there's peace, or when you think that your life is going to be easy because you've done all the things, you got the job, you got the car, you bought the house, you're paying the mortgage, your kids are out. Lord, if this boy don't get out of my house, you think that you got
Right?
all you think that you got all the things, and then something happens. I'm not going to name it because I'm not messing with the universe right now. So your book, Through You to You by Maisha Thompson, Unlearning Silence by Elaine, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these other books are helping you to prepare spiritually, emotionally, financially for what may come.
Mm-hmm.
Healing isn't linear. It's not a destination. There will be ups and downs. I thought my life was perfect when I worked at that trad publishing company. I
Oh,
thought that I was going to climb the corporate ladder. And God says, psych, no, you're not. And I, my
as God
healing,
does, as God does.
as God does. And I'm
Yes.
not mad. It needed
Yeah.
to be done. And my healing looked like this, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And and it affected the parts of my life that were good and that were thriving.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're older, and I hope younger our younger generation is hearing this as well, because it took me until my 40s and 50s to realize this. Just because you fall down doesn't mean something is wrong with you or you did something wrong. Sometimes you have to go through this learning period to get the lesson so you can go higher and be better. Read these books, take that class, go to therapy to prepare you for if something happens the next time.
Mm-hmm. Because something will.
Because something will.
Something will. And you know that is the guarantee in life. I used to really not love the expression, the only constant is change. Right? I'm like, if one of y'all tell me that one more time. But the only constant is change. The only constant is change. Change is coming. And change does not necessarily have to be difficult or traumatic. Um, it often is. And I'll explain part of the reason why. Part of the reason why it often is because we're stubborn. We don't listen, as I think Oprah says, we don't listen on the whisper, we wait till it's a scream, right? And they're like, oh, that's what you meant. Okay. Right? I'm trying real hard now to, I don't get it right every time, but I'm trying more and more to hear the guidances on the whisper the first time. But because we don't, then we experience the difficulties, and that's just a part of like being a human in this timeline that we're in.
And
But please, no, you
and
go, please.
and what makes it difficult to hear the whisper is you wanting to go 80 miles an hour, 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. And
Hmm.
you have to stop and rest. You just have to. Not just for your physical health, but for your emotional health as well. Hearing those whispers, that voice in your head who's trying to warn you that something ain't right, but you're pushing it
Yep.
down, you're going to miss all of that when you're trying to go 80 miles an hour.
Hmm. Hmm. And without getting into it, you and I have definitely both had experiences with not listening to whispers, not like listen. Sometimes I feel, this is just me telling on myself. Sometimes I feel like if I see a red flag and I'm like, oh, what a pretty
It's so
flag.
pretty. Such a
It's
pretty
so
shade
pretty.
of red.
And there's glitter on it. I love red. It's my favorite color. And I go running, frolicking across the meadow towards the red flag,
Yep.
right? But you're supposed to run away from the red flags. So we do sometimes, not intentionally, but we do sometimes bring things on ourselves. Like I said, you and I have definitely been through situations, but there is opportunity. The great thing about life is there's always opportunity to improve and do better. And with that, I know we're almost at time. Almost at time. And so before we sign off and start to wrap up, I definitely want to ask you and give you space to tell people about more about you, more about the author's journey, all of that. Yeah, and tell us a little bit about Triumph in the Trenches. I know we've mentioned it's an anthology. And tell them about Triumph 3 and some exciting news that I know you have about that.
I do. I
Tell,
do.
tell the people.
Absolutely. Um, I did not do the long intro with all of the awards and accolades on it because I always forget. And then I realized as we were setting this up today that I probably should have included it, but I'll be back next month and then I'll have all the things there.
Yes.
But if you see the background, my company, The Author's Journey, it is an award-winning company, and then Triumph in the Trenches is a best-selling and award-winning book. Um, we are doing one last volume, volume 3, and we are still recruiting for it. But what I'm looking for goes along the lines of Shamari Wills's book, Black Fortunes, and Lisa Hurley's book, Space to Exhale. I want stories from people who learned the lesson, can guide people in learning the lesson and being better for it. So it might look like navigating toxic workplaces, leaving toxic workplaces, preparing yourself to leave toxic workplaces, or just leaving corporate and finding your own space altogether. Because, working a job isn't for everyone, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. And the reason why we are talking about this is because Lisa Hurley has lovingly agreed to write the foreword for the book. So we absolutely are looking for men and women who have stories of triumph to share when it comes to the workplace. And we are recruiting now up until the end of August. This is the year 2025. So if you are interested, you can join the link that we provided in the show notes. And we have a lot of goodies that's coming with the whole Triumph anthology all together. Should I say, or should I just like leave it?
Um, you know what? Leave it and they will tune in next time. They will tune
Okay.
in next month because you're going to
Okay.
be back, right? And
Yeah.
then for those of you who are listening to this after the date, right? After the date, please just make sure that you go and check Elona out, check out her website, The Author's Journey, and connect to her on LinkedIn. And just, she is definitely somebody that I recommend authors work with. So, right, that's my little plug. Yes, she's my friend, but she's also, like I said, she's my colleague, and I am one of her clients. And so I, 5 stars, highly recommend. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. And everyone who has been watching for the past, I think this is episode 12 today, I think, I'm not sure. Anyway, for the past several episodes, you know that I always share an affirmation and every episode. And so today's affirmation is I am giving myself permission to write and share my truth. I am giving myself permission to write and share my truth. I am giving myself permission to write and share my truth. And with that, folks, that's our show. That's our show. Make sure to connect with me. Make sure to connect with Elona. And thanks to everyone for joining us today on Space to Exhale, the podcast. Tune in every Tuesday live on LinkedIn to catch the vibes, and we love vibes. And if you can't make the live show, that's no problem. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube to catch the replay. And again, if you want to dive deeper into what Elona and I discussed today, definitely connect with her on LinkedIn. Visit her website at theauthorsjourney.co.co. And also be sure to get a copy of my book, Space to Exhale, which is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Marcus Books, Wiley Publishing, all the places. And please, y'all, I'm going to start putting, can y'all go leave a review? Can y'all leave sis a review, please? Leave a review for me and leave one for Elona's book as well, Triumph in the Trenches. Her anthologies are available on Amazon, so please do that for us.
It,
Let us
hold on.
know.
It's available everywhere.
Oh,
So,
yes,
yes, because I remember I'm an Ingram Spark Pro member, so I have the same
yes.
distribution that traditional publishers have, and we'll be talking about that next month. But yes,
We
it's available in all the places.
all the places, right? So it's both books available all places. Leave reviews for all the books, all the places. And check out my website, space2exhalebook.com, for all the updates about soft life shenanigans. So goodbye for now. Thanks for being here. And remember, you are worthy of rest, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of having time and space to exhale. Thank you so much for being here.